Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, brought to you by Ranchright. I'm John Haskell, and I'm here today with Wally Olson, and I want to talk more about some different contexts in which we use sell-by. Sell-by marketing is, to my mind, more a philosophy than a technique, and I want to demonstrate that by talking through some situations that most people don't understand how to apply it in. So today we're going to talk about sell-by within a seasonal grazing context. Wally and I have a number of friends who graze stocker cattle for either a year or part of a year, but they're not necessarily trading back and forth frequently, which is a common misconception about sell-by marketing. They are buying cattle in the fall or in the spring and then running them through to a usually fairly predetermined end date and making that work. Wally, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. And let's talk about sell-by marketing within a seasonal grazing enterprise.
First, we're going to talk about in the cow-calf business.
Sounds good. So we'll break this in two pieces.
Yep.
We'll do cow-calf, and then we'll do stocker operation.
To do sell-by marketing on cows and calves, you need to get your calving date such that you can either sell the calf or the yearling in the same year. So you're not getting hung up on taxes. And I'll give you an example. If you normally sell your calves in November, then you would sell a yearling the next year. Consequently, that gets you into a tax bind, so you don't even look at the yearling side of it. Whereas if you calve later and you have the opportunity to sell your calf into grass fever in the spring, or you can carry it into the summer and graze it into a yearling, you're selling the calf and the yearling in the same tax year.
Okay, so let's explain that just a little. So if we're a spring calving herd, and when you say later, you mean, let's say, a May or a June type calving herd, you have the opportunity to sell those calves, let's say, in the fall of the same year, or in the spring of the next year, or in the end of the summer of the next year, or in the fall even of the next year. Okay. And so what we're trying to do is not get in a situation where we're maybe doubling up some years and then splitting some years. We get ourselves a reasonable pattern where we are selling things. I say consistently, but obviously all other factors being equal, we are going to try not to create a situation where we have big spikes one year in income and big drops.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And so that doesn't mean that we don't change that periodically, but if we do, we have to really pay attention to what the other implications are.
Correct.
Okay.
And one thing you do as you are moving forward with this calf that you've raised, and you say, I'm not selling it as a light calf in the fall. I'm going to carry it into the spring. And so when you get into the spring, you can sit and look at what that calf's value is compared to what that yearling will be worth.
So you can calculate the value of gain for that yearling to see if you're going to get paid to continue running.
Yeah, and to carry it.
Yep.
And if you do that, I used to say you needed to hedge them. So you use that market.
Yep.
You can figure out and say, it's very profitable, I'm going to carry in dogless. Well, unless you use some market, and now with LRP, it is very easy to risk manage that. Yeah, and understand sell-by marketing, people say that, but you sold that calf, and now you kept the cow, so you have bought another calf at whatever your cost of production is. And that's how you use sell-by marketing in a seasonal or in a cow-calf operation.
Let's call that a cow-calf operation in a highly seasonal environment.
Yes,
sir. So again, north of I-70, often where winter is a severe issue.
Right.
Okay, so I just want to review that again. So if I have a spring-born calf, I have an opportunity at each of 3 points to check whether or not I can go forward. In theory, I can check this every day, but there are 3 very practical points, especially on an extensive operation where I probably have my hands on those cattle or have them in a corral or I'm shipping them or doing something where there's a transition that makes sense. So the first time would be in the fall if you're going to process them or move them to wherever you're going to winter them. And I have the ability to calculate based on that day's data or that week's data the value of gain, should I go forward or not? So that's one yes, no type question. Am I going to get paid to keep that calf after, let's say I'm going to plan to wean or preg check in November? I have my hands on those cattle. Now I need to say, does it pay me to keep those calves or not?
Correct.
Then the next time would be, and I think of this as any time after the first of the year. So first of the year until about April, you have the opportunity to keep looking at that relationship. Does it pay me to go forward? Does it, or should I liquidate them now? Are they overpriced or underpriced? If we decide they are overpriced, we can often use LRP or a real Chicago type contract or a hedge or an option to protect our pricing there. And then again, at the end of the period, the third marketing opportunity would be late summer, early fall, when that calf has now grown into a feeder and is ready to go to feed. What are my choice there, I guess, especially in a highly seasonal environment? If I've got an 850-pound calf in September, am I going to hold that calf?
Depends on if you're never ever going to feed one. And also you need to understand that basically most cow-calf people are out of time because they aren't going to feed them. They don't have the cash to feed one.
And you probably don't have the grass at home.
In theory, when you did your risk protection, you sold that calf.
Correct. And that's where I'm going with this, is that one of the reasons to do the risk protection at, let's say, March or April, if you're going to go through the summer with them, is because when you get to that end point with an 850-pound calf in Wyoming, you probably don't want to winter that sucker.
Yeah.
And you may or may, if you're not someone that wants to own it in the feed yard, then, and the same thing, if you are going to own it in a feed yard, you probably want to consider some risk protection there, because again, when you get to the end, you have to get out. Once that calf is 1,350 pounds, you're out of time, you're out of money, you're out of all kinds of things.
And understanding, to me, when you do the sell by, you keep the cow to raise another calf for use. And
so your replacement is the cow.
The replacement is the calf.
The calf in
the cow.
Yeah. The pregnant cow is what produces the replacement.
Correct.
Love it. Okay, good. Anything else on the cow-calf?
To me, that is basically it. And like I said, you're going to have to get it in the same tax year because people just lock up on that. And also, moving cattle to sell in grass fever is most of the time very profitable, depending on where you're at.
Okay, so let's talk about that time of year and also the difference between grass fever and late summer. Grass fever, in my mind, is variable based on the local conditions.
That's
that fair? So some years you will get into a grass year that is outstanding, and some years it'll be a dud.
But most of the time, people are anticipating a good year, and there is always grass fever.
Yeah.
And grass fever in Oklahoma starts in February and March, and grass fever in Nebraska and Wyoming is May.
Okay. And then in the north, as we get later in the season, it seems like grass fever is early. It's less tempered by the weather. As you get later, reality is setting in, right? By the time you get to May, you have a pretty good idea if you're going to have grass or not based on snowpack, if you irrigate or rainfall, snowfall to date. Okay. So the other thing that's interesting always is if you look at the board and you look at cash markets, often there is a significant roll up in price, meaning an increase in the price per pound as you move to different seasons. So from October to April, there is usually a significant roll up, right? Yeah. For a calf of the same price. And we've looked at this a number of years. There's usually a 20-cent roll up between April and August, September.
On a feeder round.
Correct.
Yes.
So that is not an every year thing, and that isn't necessarily something we are betting on or predicting, but it's a fairly consistent pattern. Right?
Correct.
The fall is often a bad time to market a small heifer because they are often underpriced. Yes. And the fall is often an excellent time to market a feeder heifer or a feeder steer.
Yes, a big feeder.
Correct.
That they can put against the April board.
Yep, that's right.
They just love them.
Okay. And so sometimes a big portion of the value of going forward comes from that roll up in prices. Right. So if I can make 20 cents more per pound, I may not have to add that many pounds for that animal to be profitable moving from April to August.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, good. Let's talk about a seasonal stocker enterprise then. So again, we're thinking about environments or contexts where we are heavily constrained on time and we're not in and out of the market continuously. Maybe we have 10 feet of snowfall or we have terrible mud that makes it best if we get out of the owning livestock for a period of time. Let's think about that in the stocker business.
If you're a seasonal grazer, when it comes time to buy your stock, you just figure out what the most undervalued is and you buy them.
And if you don't have a sale that you are comparing to, how do you determine that most?
It's just the value of gain between the weight classes and whether steers and heifers. You look at the discount between a steer and a heifer, and then you compare the weight classes.
So this becomes as simple as, if I'm going to feed a calf for 100 days, do I want to get paid, let's say, $2 for my grass or 80 cents?
That's correct.
Right. We don't have to make it complicated.
Nope.
We are literally looking at what is the best cash return to our grass.
Just selling your grass.
Okay.
That's right.
And so when I calculate that value of gain, what that is saying is that at different weight classes, there are different values. And what I should do is be responsive to the market if I want to generate the most value from my grass.
Correct.
Okay. How hard is that to do year to year? Let's say if we're buying in the spring and selling in the fall, how hard is that to do? Are there times when there are no underpriced animals?
No, unless there's only one in the pen.
Sometimes you might do a value of gain calculation or a relative ranking or something of things. What is it that makes things undervalued?
It's just perception. And I'll give you an example. Everybody knows, and this is in the Flint Hills of Kansas, everybody knows that the best animal that will do the best on grass is a 600-pound steer. And the 700-pound steer is too big. Consequently, you can probably go buy a 700-pound steer for less money, total dollars, than a 600-pound steer. And you just put 700-pound steer on grass. Now, granted, he's going to be a 900-and-something-pound steer, and he's not going to sell for as much per pound as the 800-pound steer on the 600. But the roll up in the 700-pound steer more than covers that.
Yeah.
And they're easy. And also you can look at going back to lightweight. You can go buy 300-pound cattle where you can run two of them. Everybody says, well, 300-pound cattle won't gain as well. If there's two of them out there, they'll gain just about as well.
And if they gain half as much each, they gain the same amount.
And granted, they will take more care.
Yes.
But they're severely discounted to this.
And on a light calf, especially, you may be looking at a different time to market them.
Yeah.
Right. So you may not be selling them in August or the 1st of August.
But you'll find that 300-pounder will turn into a 550-pounder, and there's a lot of demand for a 550-pound wean feeder calf.
Very good. The one other thing that we should expand on a little is, what about if you're buying in the fall, for example, and wintering those and then selling them the following summer or fall?
Just your costs. You need to find out whether it pays you to do that or just buy them in the spring.
Yeah.
If you're a seasonal person, there's lots of cattle put in grow yards.
Do I worry about their weight gain during the winter?
You need a certain amount of weight gain during the winter to cover your costs and stuff. But like for us in the Flint Hills, we can put them out on dry grass, which costs about $1 a day to have one on grass. But they're going to gain only a half a pound a day. So the cost to gain is horrendous. But the total cost of moving them from fall to spring isn't that bad.
Very big.
And then you get really good compensatory gain going to grass.
Do you see any limits in the compensatory gain function?
There's limits to everything. You just got to understand the rules and the culture of what you're doing.
Yeah. And how about a limit on gain as far as keeping them healthy?
If you're getting an animal 3/4 of a pound, if they're gaining, they will probably be healthy.
Yeah.
You've got to feed them some.
But that 1/2 to 3/4 pound usually will be enough to keep. And one of the things is that their immune system is powered by energy.
That's right.
So if they don't have enough energy, it can be very difficult to keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me ask this from a different way. When, again, we talk about sell by, a lot of people think, oh boy, I got to be at the sale barn. I got to be trading stuff. Like, I got to be moving stuff in and out of this place. Is there ever an advantage to buying an overpriced animal?
I haven't ever thought about that. I don't believe so.
Okay. Is there ever a disadvantage to buying an underpriced animal?
Depends on why it's underpriced.
Okay.
And you got to decide. The deal is we're not talking about buying underpriced, is not buying junk or sick or whatever.
Correct. Absolutely.
are underpriced is just the relation of the value of the gain that the market's willing to give you or take away from you.
Yeah. So the way I've been looking at it is even if I do one trade a year, if I start with an underpriced animal, the old saying of you make money on the buy,
Correct.
I start with an underpriced animal, I am more likely to be profitable than if I buy an overpriced animal.
Correct.
So again, there need be no trading. There need be no back and forth to the sale barn. There doesn't have to be any of that. If I buy once a year and I buy an underpriced animal, that doesn't guarantee that I'm actually going to be profitable in an economic sense, but it gives me the best chance of getting there. Yep. Is that fair?
And it's just like going back to the 600 pound is the ideal grass animal.
Yeah.
And everybody's willing to pay it. And you can move up in weight and probably get a roll up in price going forward. Or you can go back to a lighter weight calf and the value of gain is that much higher.
Yeah, great. Again, thinking about that value of gain, when I buy the calf that I believe has the highest value of gain, that does not guarantee that is what I'm going to get paid.
That's correct.
What that does is establish a probability that I am going to make more than buying an overpriced animal.
That's right.
If you pay too much at the beginning, you've shot yourself in the foot right out the gate.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Wally, thank you. This is really helpful. Again, I really want to make sure people understand that the sell-buy philosophy does not require any specific set of actions. We can apply sell-buy in breeding herds. We can apply sell-buy in a stocker operation. We can apply sell-buy with a high-frequency trading environment or a once-a-year trading environment. And what we are trying to do over and over again is give ourselves the best probability of being profitable. As we've talked about in this, where there's a difference between economic profit and cash flow, the buyback is what generates profit, but the selling generates cash flow. And so we want to make sure we understand those two separately. We'll probably talk about that another time. So, Wally, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.